My guest today is a former NHS GP, Sunday Times best-selling author, and founder of the platform The Doctor's Kitchen. He's reinvented himself to teach us that what you put on your plate is as important, if not more important, than what's in your medicine cabinet. Rupi has manifested this incredible kitchen and the pink fridge, and a manifestation came true for me today because I have been waiting to interview him whilst he cooks, and he's produced this amazing dish which I can't wait to now eat.
Doctor's Kitchen. Recipes, health, lifestyle.
Rupi, this is my dream come true, to be sitting in the kitchen with you, having you cook for me, and get to chat with you at the same time. And then additional bonus, the pink smoke fridge.
I know, I love it. I had a vision for having a big, fat, pink fridge in my studio kitchen, and it came to life. I started doing the whole affirmations and manifesting and vision action boarding. I literally wrote an article about a journalist coming to my studio. Oh, going to the Doctor's Kitchen studio is like going to a health foodie's paradise. Describe the kitchen as you can see it today, with a big pink fridge, glass door where the podcast studio is. I'll show you the exact thing that I read pretty much every single day. And this is like a year and a half ago, before I'd even thought about getting a studio. I'm making a riff off like a dal makhani. It's a recipe that I actually got from food producers, that they've got like a recipe online with red beans and lentils, but I'm sort of Doctor's Kitchenifying it with extra greens, nitrate-rich vegetables that I feel like people need to have every single day, plenty of spices. We're going to stew down some of these beans with a bit of onion, garlic, chili, and ultimately it's going to be delicious and nourishing.
The fact that you were a full-time doctor for many, many years.
And now this is how I practice medicine.
The only question that came into my mind that I was going to ask you, and it probably comes from deep, within me as well, as did you or do you feel guilty about not being a doctor?
Yeah, I did feel guilty because it's like, well, you're not having that one-to-one interaction. You're not prescribing drugs. You're not like part of a specific person's treatment plan. Whereas actually now I'm part of multiple people's treatment plans, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, hopefully in the future. I'm actually encouraging a new way of thinking and new culture of people being their own doctors, being more intuitive about how to look after the health so they don't need to come and see someone like me. I'm going to get on with it. I mean, you were already good in the kitchen, right?
Yeah, I love cooking. Cooking is like therapy for me.
Yeah, exactly.
If you do a mindfulness activity like yoga or meditation, then maybe you're doing that for 10 minutes or an hour, and then for the other 23 hours of the day you're living, not necessarily mindfully. But in COVID I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time in nature and like cooking 3 times a day, and they became more intertwined, like life and mindfulness became one.
Because you're stimulating so many different signals. At that time, you're quietening down the noise of the day-to-day to concentrate on all these different elements of cooking and being in that sort of like homely environment of the kitchen. And I think a lot of people feel that, it's not just about the nutrition or the impact of these particular ingredients. I look at like an onion and I see not only the sort of nutritional properties, the prebiotic fibers, the allicin, the phytochemicals that we know are anti-inflammatory, it signals to your immune system. I also sort of see it. I know the flavors I'm looking for. I know that if I cook this for 10, 15 minutes, it's going to sweeten. If I do it very quickly, like 2 or 3 minutes in the pan, it's going to have a bit more bite to it. It's going to have a different flavor profile. I've just chopped up these onions and I've just grated some garlic and ginger. People use like those garlic pastes and stuff, which are great. They're good time savers, but I always find it's better to just get the fresh stuff and just do it yourself with a little micro plan. And I'm just going to toss these into a pan with a bit of oil. The original sort of dal makhani recipe is like loads of butter or ghee or like, flour, butter, cream, exactly.
Yeah.
This is going to be a bit lighter, but we're just going to mash a couple of these beans and lentils in the pan to give that sort of like richness without the need for extra cream and heaviness. All right, so I'm just going to sweat these onions down for around 4 to 5 minutes or so.
For any doctors out there, look at you and I and think, that's great, but I couldn't do that. And, I've been that person. What are your biggest insights about how difficult it is to leave such a vocational career?
It's a common question and a common issue that I think a lot of my friends and colleagues ask me about, specifically about how I got into this. And my story is I fell into it. I got ill myself. I wasn't an advocate for lifestyle medicine. I had an early introduction into it through my mum, who overcame her own illnesses when I was quite young, using an Ayurvedic approach technically, essentially.
Okay.
That was my first introduction into the sort of power of lifestyle medicine. or the utility of it. When I was young, she used to suffer from anaphylactic episode, quite severe or most severe allergies where your blood pressure drops and you can go into a coma. And she went to see a whole bunch of different immunologists, multiple different positions, different second opinions, all that kind of stuff. And she was diagnosed with idiopathic anaphylaxis, i.e., we don't know why you have anaphylaxis. One of those patients, unfortunately, very commonly, where they're just sort of given an EpiPen, regular antihistamines, and told sort of like, be aware, sort of manage the condition rather than get to the root of why this might be happening. What she decided to do was take a lifestyle and diet approach. Growing up in an Indian household herself, stripped out a load of stuff out of her diet, essentially went on a very strict elimination diet for a period of around, 5 to 6 months. She started looking at stress relieving techniques. She started meditating a lot more. She started to introduce a lot more movement, yoga. She overcame her illness. Yeah, over the course of around like a year and a half or so. That actually was the inspiration for me to go into medicine. Although I quickly forgot why I went to medicine in the first place, whilst I became indoctrinated into the conventional way of thinking, until I got ill myself. I started suffering with atrial fibrillation episodes, so irregular heart rhythm. So just to go back to this, you can see it's like slightly yellowed at the moment and there's like catching on the bottom. That's sort of the signal to me to like go in with the beans now and add a little bit of water. So that was my sort of inspiration to go into, to explore other avenues, because I went to see a whole bunch of different cardiologists. I was offered an ablation. I was definitely going to go down that route. But then my mum was like, you need to really think about diet and lifestyle and all that kind of stuff that she went through earlier. So it was through that experience that I actually got involved in the food as medicine conversation and actually thinking about, okay, what are the things that I can do within my own capacity to help myself?
What you actually do, because as a junior doctor, you cannot have had much spare time to think that to learn to do things differently.
Yeah, I'd love to say that like on day one, I cleaned up my diet, I started meditating, I was in bed by 9 p.m. every single day. Like I did all the things that I know I should have done day one. But reality is I basically habit stack. I introduced one habit at a time, very, very slowly. The first thing I remember vividly doing is changing up my breakfast. So instead of having like the Weetabix, that went out, and then I would start experimenting with like overnight oats or like oats with like nuts and seeds. Just thinking about ways in which I can clean up my diet, basically. That was the thinking at the time. So I'm just gonna add some water to this. I just want everything to sort of like simmer away, a little bit of chili. And this will take about 12-15 minutes. And we'll let that just chip away. I'm also gonna add some tomatoes to this as well, just to introduce extra nutrients and flavor. I got this reputation at this GP surgery that I was training at for being the GP or the trainee that would talk to patients about diet.
And that's really unusual.
Yeah, it is. It was unusual. Certainly at the time, it was like 2012 or something. And I was reading all these studies and I was like, bloody hell, like we've been sat on like a lot of bona fide research looking at things like the Mediterranean diet, for example, portfolio diets that reduce cholesterol and, as effective as some of the medications that we use. I remember like, at the time I was dealing with a lot of patients who had side effects as a result of statins, like myopathy, like very, really common stuff. And asking me, is there anything that I do my lifestyle and stuff instead of taking drugs? And, I was one of those people that was like, actually, yeah, there is. There's a few things that I've been learning about myself. And if you're willing to experiment, then absolutely, we can try them and see how you get on. Those are the kind of things I'd be talking to people about, as well as like all the very sort of important things like ensuring that you're doing plenty of cardiovascular exercise, you're mixing it up. I mean, it was fascinating for me because I was learning this stuff for me, and I realized like a lot of other people could benefit from this sort of information as well.
So what happened about your atrial fibrillation?
Oh yeah, going back to that, went away.
Seriously?
So after a year and a half, I was really fastidious about measuring and monitoring when I was having episodes because I wanted to figure out if there was a trigger. Every time I had an episode, I would record, okay, what had I eaten? What had I been doing? But I couldn't find a clear pattern. I was having episodes that lasted anywhere between 12 and 36 hours, 2-3 times a week.
Wow.
And then I vividly remember having this conversation with my cardiologist. There's been a gap between episodes. I'm used to having it at least twice a week, and it's been 3 months and I haven't had one. And he's saying to me, it's usual for atrial fibrillation to go through periods of quiescence, so quieten down, but it's most likely going to come back. Okay, fine. 3 months and 6 months, it turned 12 months, and it literally, like, I haven't had an episode since. And so for me, that was validation that the things that I was doing had a significant impact. And what worked for me doesn't necessarily mean it will work for everyone else.
No.
But there are some factors that I think are really important.
Yeah.
Omega-3. Really important. So I started supplementing with omega-3 at the time. I started drinking in dehydrated greens drinks. So something similar to athletic greens, but this was like old school. I got it from this place in Brighton. He would make it himself, and it had all the sort of healthy ingredients you can imagine, like barley grass, wheatgrass, spirulina. I would have like different types of kale in it and stuff. That would be dehydrated and it would taste horrible. But I remember I had that literally every day, and I still have a version of that every day. When I think about what that constitutes, potential reasons to why that helps me, they're really rich in magnesium. Magnesium is at the center of the chlorophyll molecule, and chlorophyll is what you find in green vegetables. That may have been, adjusting my magnesium levels. Think of other things that could have explained it. I was having so much more diversity in my diet that most likely would have had an impact on the health and the population of my microbes. That has an impact on blood sugar levels, inflammation levels. It would have been a confluence of lots of different things that would have led to me ultimately reverting my atrial fibrillation, which no one thought was possible, including myself.
An incredible story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some people will be thinking right now, okay, you had easier access to that than maybe somebody else would, and you'd seen your mother do the same thing. And obviously for her, culturally, she just went to her culture and thought, what can I do? And then you had witnessed that as a child.
Yeah.
And you put together both being a doctor and your cultural background to do the things that you did. Yeah. It's really made me go from that shared feeling of always being slightly guilty that you stopped being a doctor to really appreciating how important it is what you've done, because of how much this can help people who, maybe don't know about Ayurveda.
I was speaking at a conference, and somebody in the audience who was from Indian origin was like, why don't you just call it what it is? Why don't you just call what you're doing Ayurveda? This is Ayurvedic medicine that you're practicing. I appreciated that, but at the same time, I feel like people warm to different labels. If I was to say what I'm doing to some of my colleagues as Ayurvedic medicine, the barriers go up immediately. Right? The wall is there. Yeah. If I say this is lifestyle medicine, this is exercise medicine, this is sleep medicine, these are sort of terms that I feel people warm to a lot more. Ancient wisdom exists everywhere. Whether it's Native Americans, whether it's the Japanese, the Chinese, so many different sort of modalities of medicine that appear to cross over.
One of the people that I work with did say to me, I'm not you, I'm not a doctor, I don't know all the things that you know, so it's harder for me to be intuitive about, my body and my habits. But that's why I think it's, so important what we're doing, sharing these simple little things that, and like what you said about ancient wisdom, is that this stuff has been staring us in the face for millennia. It's just about going back to some of those things. Okay, what's going on here?
So I'm just adding some tomato puree to the lentils.
I sort of don't really get tomato puree. Okay. So if you put a can of tomatoes in, what's the difference or, additional?
I'm glad you asked this, because I was just about to talk to you about why I'm using tomato puree. So tomato puree is like a real concentrated flavor of tomatoes. If you imagine like having a mush of tomatoes and just like allowing that to reduce, you're concentrating all those flavors. So it's got like a sweetness that is very hard to get from your canned tomatoes unless you really give it the amount of time it needs to stew right down. You get double or triple concentrated tomato puree, and it should just be 100% tomatoes, nothing else added to it. The tomatoes will give a bit of acidity and bite to it. And so the combination of those two is really what you want. I always do this by eye. I know people always hate it when I don't give them the exact quantities, but that's a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Add like a good pinch of salt.
Is that oil or butter or both?
This is both. This is a combination of butter and oil. I like having a little bit of oil with the butter, so the butter doesn't like brown completely.
So that was fennel seed.
This is fennel seeds. Also, you could add asafoetida, but we didn't actually get asafoetida today, so you can use fenugreek seeds for a similar sort of flavor.
Oh, I didn't realise they were quite interchangeable, actually.
Yeah, asafoetida blender is you usually get it ground. Kind of gives that the sort of background hum to your Indian meals that you can't really recreate at home. When you go to an Indian restaurant and you try their curry, you try and do it at home, you're like, smells, there's something different. I don't know what it is, the aspartame. I'm just gonna mash these down with a little bit. You could use like a stick blender or just mash half of it, because dal makhani has got like cream and all that heaviness in it. But for this, I'm not gonna add the cream. I'm just gonna mash it so it all sort of comes together, and there'll be a little bit of like creaminess to it. So we're gonna mash about a third of this.
Okay, and that's just to give that texture.
Yeah, just a bit of texture. You could use a stick blender as well, but I think it just gives a nice little texture.
And I think, one of the points of what we've just been discussing about adding, more spices or different spices to things is that, ideally people could be trying to eat 30 different plant products a week. And, the spices contribute to that. Different colours of the same food contributes to that too.
So you want to be counting your colours rather than your calories, because it's all about the quality of the food that you're eating rather than sort of an arbitrary nutritional number.
Yeah.
I'm going to add this spicy oil.
Wow.
And just mix that through. You can actually see the spices mixed around it like that. And then I'm going to add just some of these peas. And again, counting colors. This is something that I think is just so easy to do. And with spinach in particular, everyone's had that experience where you get a bag of spinach and you put it in and then it just kind of like wilts to nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And you're like, what happened to my spinach? If you buy it frozen, already been wilted down, and they flash freeze it. And so you actually get a lot more bang for your buck that way.
Great.
So it's a really good little tip. And I'm just going to put the lid back on and allow this to defrost. Add a little bit of extra liquidness. This, I believe, is going to be done. Okay, so I'm going to just chop this coriander. I'm going to use the leaves, but do not throw away the stems. These stems can be used at the base of like stews, curries. You've got to use the stems in here, but you could very, very easily just chop the stems and put that in. You're adding extra fiber, extra those phytonutrients. All right. Okay, we're going to put this on half. There you go.
So tell us a bit about your app.
The Doctor's Kitchen app, been like a dream of mine to be able to scale up what I do for individuals in a real big way. Realize that to have the biggest impact, particularly from a nutrition point of view, I literally need to be in people's pocket. I need to be guiding them. I need to be streamlining and removing all the friction that exists when it comes to eating well every day. Our app, the vision for it is you go into the app, you choose your health goal, it auto-generates your meals for you. So whether you need meals on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, generates a shopping list that's tailored to you. So it's sort of like a digital meal kit, but at the price of a normal supermarket. And you can tailor it to lowering cholesterol, improving menopause symptoms, improving brain health, or just general well-being. And we have 600 recipes on it. That's the vision, and that's what we're building. The idea for it is for it to be the food as medicine go-to app that is prescribable by your GP, your health professional. It's on the NHS, it's on healthcare systems around the world.
Thank goodness you left medicine and created this. Actually, it's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, just give it a minute. Is it hot?
It's absolutely delicious. Can we eat these?
You want to eat?
Yeah.
Let's see.